Of a late start here because our finance committee ran late. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Okay. Will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Knutson?
Here.
District 1 Morset?
Here.
District 2 Yaku? Here. District 3 Bernard is excused. District 4 Wyland?
Here.
District 5 O'Malley?
Here.
District 6 Burchell?
Here. Okay, at this time we take comments and suggestions from citizens present. If there's anyone here who would like to address the council tonight on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, but that might have an impact on the city of Hudson or come before the council at a future meeting, this is your chance. If you'd like to speak, come on up to the podium here and give us your name, and you'll have a chance to speak. Is there anyone? We'll move on to the consent agenda. Will you read those, please?
To approve the regular meeting minutes of June 21st, 2010, and special meeting minutes and closed session minutes of June 14th, 2010. To approve claims for payment in the amount of $403,290.50. A detailed description is available in the clerk's office on request and posted on the city's website. To approve the issuance of 32 regular operators licenses for the period July 7th, 2010 through June 30th, 2012, as recommended by the Finance Committee. A detailed list is available in the clerk's office on request. And issuance of temporary operators licenses to be used during the Hudson Hockey Association 3-on-3 event, July 10th, 2010, to Karen Drewiski and Jody Weinferter. To approve St. Croix EMS implementing a special care transport rate of $1,425 as recommended by the EMS Commission. To approve entering into an agreement with Veolia for disposal of pharmaceutical products in the Pharmaceutical Take-Back Program.
Let's remove that.
To approve the issuance of an amusement device license to Scott J. Furlong and permits for 5 amusement devices located at Pudge's. To approve accepting the clock donation from the Hudson Daybreak Rotary Club and accepting the easement agreement proposed by Ronald F. Gagnon, President, Old Town Water's Edge, LLC, for city installation, construction, and maintenance of the solar clock, flower bed, retaining wall, and 2 benches at the southeast corner of First and Walnut Streets. To place on file the quarterly report of the police chief, the semi-annual report of the compliance officer, and the community access board minutes of June 21st, 2010. That is all.
Okay, so we removed from Finance Committee number 10, the pharmaceutical take-back program. We'll take that up later. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
And a second. Roll call vote?
Morset?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Burchell?
Yes.
Yaku? Yes.
Okay, those items are approved. We'll move on to Finance Committee number 4. Consider expenditures for updating the city chamber information signs. You have in your packet some artist rendering of what these new signs look like. In brief, this was a public-private partnership that was done several years ago, many years ago, where the chamber erected the signs. They were on either city property or right-of-way. They had the joint purpose of directing people to the chamber and also to city items of interest to tourists. The signs had become faded and weathered to the point that they were fairly illegible. The chamber sought grant funding to defray the cost of replacing them and received the grant, but the grant was fairly short notice. The grant required that the signs be erected by the end of June. I told them I thought it would be fine for them to replace them so long as they held space on the sign for us to use for city purposes. So you may have noticed them already. I think they look really sharp, and they're very much more legible than the old. You can see in your packet what we're proposing as potentially what might be added for the items of interest, but that's something that could be discussed tonight. I think the historic downtown area should be one of them, both for the one that's up at the top of Cooley and the main one coming in near the wastewater treatment plant, as well as there's one that's over by Lake Malibu. And those should all advertise that. I think Lakefront Park should receive directional signage. There are 3 spaces available, is my understanding. That's the way they were left. We asked for us to get at least 2, but the way they did it was with 3, just as if you're looking at it there. What's up right now is the top part, and then where it says tourist information, the other 3 panels are currently blank. So that's the one issue, is do you want to do it? Do you want to do it now? And what would we advertise? The second issue, and what the committee recommendation at Finance, was to approve an expenditure of up to $1,380 with the final selection of the contractor to be made by staff, and to go ahead with the signage as was depicted on these drawings that you've got.
I will move the Finance Committee's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
have a
Everybody
question.
understand what's being proposed? Yes.
Well, I do have a question about what is being proposed. Because Lebo, who created the signs, we have in our notification here that they have offered to install the city informational signs. I assume that means to create and install the signs, right?
Right, it was a multi-part bid. I mean, there's some renovation, because parts of the signs that were there were reused and rebuilt, so you could consider this sign renovation. And the main part of it has been done. The panels are there and are waiting for the
I've seen 'em.
letters to be applied.
They look great.
Right.
You just need to have
So you need the
something written
letters,
on them.
right. Yep.
One question came up at finance too, was Tom mentioned whether they were apples and oranges as far as reflectivity and all that, so that was something that the committee wanted us to double check on to make sure that.
Well, for that reason, I would like to see us stay with the same company throughout the process, so that they do have uniformity, they have the same reflectivity, and they don't look like they came from 2 different parts of the globe. Additionally, the second bid is from a company that the library just had some difficulty with on signage, and so I would have to vote for Lebo instead.
All right, well, this is a prime example. What I was explaining at finance is usually on items of the size of $2,000, we do not select here the final contractor, but it's our job to decide what's going to be done and establish a budget amount for it, and then the staff will make the decision. If there's some question about whether we had apples and oranges in the bidding, then we should go out and we should do formal written bids, which isn't hard to do, and do it. I mean, otherwise, the recommendation that came out of finance ultimately was to authorize staff to spend up to that and make the selection of the company. You could change that, but that's the motion that's on the floor. So if you wish to change that, let's talk with
Was there a second to that
Lee.
motion?
Yeah, I second it.
Alan seconded
So
it.
the thing that I was trying to sort out at finance, and we were pressed for time, was what is the apples to apples comparison here? I really like having the little grid here that says this contractor this much, this contractor this much. That helps a lot. So if we're gonna add
Yeah.
the 2 next to each other, we got the 1380, and then we've got, what's the other one?
Do you want to do it if it's 2,400?
We wanna do it.
Authorize up to 2,400, they can do it.
Well, and that's what I was starting to wonder, what we're trying to figure out here, where is that number that we give the staff the flexibility to choose the right contractor based on
The first contractor said he'd do it for $54 per item, so it's like Lakefront Park is gonna cost $54. Or, at the time of original installation, if you had to come back, he was gonna charge $65 for each of those items.
Mhm.
The second contractor gave a price of $50 to come anytime to do it. And the question was raised whether they're the exact same letters, whether it's reflective or not, I don't know.
Mhm.
And we'd need to do some more staff work on that. There's no rush. If you want this to go back and come back with a grid, with formal pricing and your grid, like you said, we can bring it back in 2 weeks. I mean, signs aren't going anywhere. They'll just be blank in the meantime.
I do have a quick question on funding, though. Is this the same funding source we use for signs throughout the city as far as,
Yeah.
It's signed.
well,
The last time we spent money on doing this, it lasted probably in the range of 15 years. There's no
Mhm.
reason to think this is gonna be a common thing. I mean, once in a while, you have to update these signs. The fact that the chamber got a grant to do the basic work, which was the bulk of it, is to our benefit.
well, I totally agree, but I'm concerned about us having enough available, or whether we use our contingency funds for signs for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
How much
Well-
is left in the sign budget?
$4,000.
And the fact that these do last so long, my concern is that they look right.
Mhm.
Because we're gonna have to live with them for a long
I
time.
agree, I'm a very big proponent of those signs.
Yeah. I mean, the sign boards look great.
Mhm.
Just need to have something written on them. 3 on each side, 6 total. And I want it to look great, because that's us putting our best foot forward to people who are visiting our city.
I'll modify my proposal to give our team a little more flexibility here, because I think that they do need to make some, we don't want to have to come back 2 weeks from now and say, well, 1380 wasn't it, it's 1390. I think that they can make a good decision based on the outlines we've given them. So I'm going to modify my motion to say up to $2,400. That looks like that would give them the opportunity to look at a couple different options.
Okay, well, does the seconder agree?
No.
No. So the motion
I mean,
stands.
that's over half of our sign budget for the rest of the year.
The motion stands then. Any other discussion on the motion?
Doesn't that allow me to retract my motion then?
You would?
I will retract my motion, and I will make a new motion that
Can
we,
does the seconder, we have this weird rule here
Oh,
at
that's
City
right.
Council. No one else has this rule. The motion belongs to the maker of the motion and the seconder, apparently. Tell you what, I'm gonna rule that you can retract your motion. If one of you wanna challenge me on it, go ahead. We'll vote.
I'm fine.
You, okay. The
Yep.
motion's retracted.
all right.
Does anyone wish to make a new motion?
I'll make a motion that we authorize up to $2,400 to be spent on our Welcome to Hudson signs, in this case. And that the departments then, based on the requirements that we've outlined earlier, as far as look and availability and weathering, choose the right contractor.
Let me point out, and to defend the staff, the reason that you don't see the regular staff work here is at the time the packet was getting put together, or late on Thursday afternoon, we only had one price, and I said, let's make another call and try to get at least one more price before the meeting. We did, but we could get 2 or 3 more if we had more time. So, and it's possible that Lebo wants to sharpen his pencil, given the chance to give another price. So, you know, everybody involved, we could do a very simple written spec for what we're looking for and get even apples to apples pricing.
I think what you said makes an awful lot of sense, and that's what I would like we don't have a second yet on Lee's motion, but I think that's the way to go, is to let's actually just put it out for bid.
All right, Lee's motion is to approve up to $2,400 with the staff to take bids and choose a contractor. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Really?
Is there a second? Anyone like to make another motion?
Move that we put together a comprehensive spec sheet with the parties and with the departments involved and put this out for bid.
With no cap.
And bring
Just
it back
put it out
to
for bid.
Bring it back for approval afterwards?
And bring it back to the city, our normal process.
I'll second that.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just with timing, it may be the first meeting in August, just so everybody's aware of that.
Signs aren't going anywhere.
Clarify for me, how come they are not taking the expense, the chamber, through that grant? They used the grant money up on,
The grant money was specifically not allowed to
For the exact
advertise. Right, it was from the Department of Tourism.
okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed. Let's go on to number 5. Consider rejecting the proposal from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities to join the Urban Alliance. It's the new organization after the blending in of the former League of Cities into the League of Municipalities. League of Cities is no more. The larger cities wish to have a subgroup within the League of Municipalities that would serve the needs of the larger municipalities within the state of Wisconsin and are setting up the Urban Alliance. It's proposed that any city above 10,000 could join, and our additional dues would be around $1,000 a year. I recommend that we don't. I think we're served perfectly well by the League of Municipalities, and the Finance Committee recommended rejecting this.
I'll move to reject not participating in the new Urban Alliance.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Seems better suited to cities of 50,000 plus, not 10,000 plus.
Yes. Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And that passed. Number 6 is consider using and developing approximately 10 acres of Outlot 1 in Hudson Meadows as a city park. We had some discussion about this at the Finance Committee, somewhat of a complex issue. This parcel is 14 acres. It's located south of the Hudson Theater, north of the Hudson Meadows subdivision, east of new Highway 35. It's basically along Highway 35. A good portion of the land is low and is designated as a stormwater retention basin. Some of it is sloped and is not buildable. Some of it is wooded. The north 3 or 4 acres was desired by the water utility. They have drilled a test well and the water was good. They have then put in a complete production well, which is there right now and is capped and not in use. Last year they took bids on building about a $5 million water treatment plant and decided not to go forward with that expense at this time, but it might happen in the future. The access to the site for the water treatment plant, if it's built, and for the maintenance of the well, is from the south through the subdivision. The subdivision homeowners, formerly had a homeowners association that had been established at the creation of the subdivision, and this parcel was owned by that homeowners association. The homeowners association entered negotiations with the city a few years ago to sell the parcel to the city. Well, part of the negotiations were that we agreed that we would create a picnic pavilion, 3 parking spaces, and a driveway, and that the rest of the land would be used for the water plant, and then the rest of it would remain in a natural state. And then that once it was, so the pavilion will be created by the water utility at their expense, as will the driveway and the parking lot. But once those are completed, then they become the city's responsibility to maintain. The question here seems to be one of interpretation. Should we create a park there, a proper park? Or will the picnic pavilion just be a picnic pavilion on city-owned land and not be a park? If it's not a park, then it isn't in the jurisdiction, so to speak, of the park board, which I think is strange. And that's where this parcel has been. The first time this whole idea ever went to the park board was just recently, about a month ago. And they recommended that we go forward and create a new city park there. My recommendation is that we should create the south 10 acres be used and developed as a park. What was my language there? Used and developed as a city park with not more than 2 acres to be mowed, leaving the rest in a natural state. At the Finance Committee, we had a lengthy discussion about the cost involved in maintaining 2 extra acres. And we learned from a lawn mowing contractor that it costs about $55 a week to mow 2 acres of park. The question then becomes, what do you wish to do here? We are obligated, and the park and the water utility will be creating the picnic pavilion, and they will be creating the driveway and the parking lot, and they will be turning those features over to us to maintain. And it will be public land because it's already been deeded to the city, so it is public land. The question is, should we create a minimal park facility there with the idea of, I guess, in my mind, a picnic pavilion has a little bit of grass around it. And that's just maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I just think they should. And so I think it comes down to the question of, is it a half acre, 1 acre, or how much is it? 2 acres is a pretty big park. I mean, you could have quite a touch football game on 2 acres.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I agree with your recommendation. I would like to see it at 2 acres because I do know that most of the kids in that area are playing in the street. And the safer they are if we get them off the street and put them on the grass, and I like the 2 acres. I disagree with 55. Well, maybe that's your contractual rate at 55 for 2 hours, but I think we and our part-time staff could do it at a $12 hour rate, a lot cheaper than $55, which is what, $200 and some dollars a month. Could be done a lot cheaper in-house.
Okay, well.
I'll move for your approval on your recommendation. No more than 2 acres of mowable grass.
I never got around to telling you what the Finance Committee recommendation was, which after a lot of discussion, they did recommend what I had recommended here.
I was here.
Is that your motion?
I second that.
There's a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I need some clarification on one point. You had just mentioned you could have a heck of a touch football game there, and I don't think so if you've only got 3 parking stalls. Is this a park with 3 parking spaces?
Well, there's a subdivision there with maybe 60 homes in it. I don't know how many homes are there. There's probably 60 homes. They're on the far side of Highway 35.
I know
So
exactly
to get to
where
the
it
next
is.
nearest park, which is White Camp Park, you're probably getting in your car and driving there, whereas
Sure.
they can walk to this park just like kids downtown here can walk to Burton Field. You have a touch football game at Burton Field, the kids don't all get in their car and drive there every
Well,
time.
let's hope not.
Especially if they're kids.
We just don't have any parks with only 3 parking spaces.
No, you're wrong. We have a park without parking spaces in Webster Park.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna vote no on this. I think it's how government grows out of hand. And stuff like this comes through and we haven't gone to any budget hearings, we haven't talked at all about what's the impact long-term for maintenance and control, and I just think it's bad business to go ahead and authorize spending without knowing what the long-term consequences are. Somebody has to be in charge of the park board and how much they spend or how much they recommend. I don't believe they have a budget per se that, what happens is the park board says we want this, or the police department says we want this, and Public Works has to find a way to pay for it. And I think we need to do a better job of planning before we go ahead and say, yeah, let's go ahead and take this. And that's the reason I just think that putting a I don't know if that's, some place has to, some place is gonna have to suffer or get less maintenance, and, one of our councilmen said our parks look like crap. So now we're gonna add another one, and I disagree with that. I think our parks look very good, but I just think adding another place for maintenance without figuring out what the long-term consequence is a mistake, and I'll be voting no.
I don't want Alan to seem like Ebenezer Scrooge all by himself. I'm going to be voting no on this also because we just had a discussion at Public Works about this very issue. We have mission creep here, and it just always gets back to, well, Public Works now has to maintain this. We don't have the budget to maintain this. I believe that this should stay as a picnic pavilion and not as a park. I understand the city owns it, and Public Works sooner or later is going to have to come in and do something with it, repair something or maintain something. But we don't have it in our budget to go across 35 and mow this grass every week all summer long. And I know that sounds hard-hearted, and I don't wish to seem so. I believe that as a picnic pavilion, it's still a place for family and children to go. But as a park, it's just another responsibility for Public Works, and it's an unfunded mandate, one of many that we have.
Mr. Mayor, if I may say something, this neighborhood gave money to the builder, the previous developer, for this purpose. When the water department bought it out, where did that money go? With the water department. That's why this got started. This is why they were offered the pavilion with 3 parking stalls, what have you. It's useless to the neighborhood if there's not an area for children to play. You can't just leave the complete area natural growth. There has to be grass for the area to play. I agree with Randy. I think if we use part-timers, I asked how long does it take to mow 2 acres of land. He's told me 1 hour. 1 hour, a part-time rate is $12. It's not, and 1 garbage can to take a garbage bag out and put a garbage bag back in. I don't find that to be difficult maintenance. They're not asking for the world. They're asking for an area that they were promised where their children can play. They're not asking for a play set. They're asking for an area that they were promised where their children can play. I don't want my children playing in buckthorn and thistle. You need to mow an area. There has to be an area. We need to be fair to this development. They have nowhere else to go. And when they built there, they built with the assumption that there would be an area for their children to play. It's not their fault that the city bought the land, and it's not their fault that this happened. I think it is our duty to fix this issue. And I think we can find a way. I'll find a spot to slash in the Public Works budget if we need to fit this in. It can be done. There's lots of things being asked for. I've seen the budget too.
And I believe that we purchased this from the Homeowners Association, who were planning on putting in a park. That was their plan for this space.
Can impact fees be used for this?
Well, I think we've got broad agreement on this subject. I'm happy to see it. Because everybody knows that the budget is tight, and I think now we've all agreed that if we're going to spend more money somewhere, we've got to cut somewhere else. This is progress. We're all on the same page.
Give me the pen and the paper. I've heard the line before, but this time I'll actually do it.
Now,
Can I say
the
something?
question is, how big should it be? Honestly, I threw that 2 acres out there as a straw man. I never really expected it would get this far. As I said at the Finance Committee, but you got to have a little grass around the pavilion. I mean, maybe 25, 30 feet around the thing. You can't have a picnic without having a little bit of mowed grass.
Why can't water utility maintain it? It's their property.
Well, because we agreed, Catherine can tell you, that in the purchase agreement, which actually you made the motion, I might remind you, I wasn't on the council at the time, but we agreed to that in a closed session to accept this purchase agreement with Addendum A, or Exhibit A, which is here tonight before us, and we're bound to it now. So we can't go back and say, well, we're not going to maintain it. We are going to maintain it, and in exchange, it's city land.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was probably a good thing. We got 10 acres there at least that the water utility doesn't need. Yes.
Mary, I don't believe, at least in the Exhibit A that we received, that the city or the park agreed, or the park board or the utility approved a park there. If you look at what we approved or what we agreed to do was construct a picnic pavilion in an outlot, shall reconstruct existing trail with driveway standards and provide 3 parking stalls at the picnic pavilion. There's no mention of a park at this particular location, at least based on the information that was provided to me. I wasn't on the council at that time either.
Can we fault
Let's,
them?
let's look at a couple of the correspondence
Oh.
back and forth and the expectations of the neighborhood. Yes, we're looking at the legalese of, Exhibit A. But when you look back to, where the negotiations started, Outlot 1 shall be used as a park and maintained by the city of Hudson. Now, this is where the discussion started. So we're going from the entire area being a park, now we're talking about none. I think that there's someplace in between here where, yes, we have fiscal responsibilities, yes, we have a budget that we have to keep to, but also, previous council, I believe, has set up a precedent here and has put us in a place that we need to support what we said we would do. And in the spirit of the negotiation, rather than the letter of what does number 5 say.
Al?
I agree with that, but, this was a letter written by the association agreement, not signed by the city. Anybody can write anything they want and say, this is what we want, but I would go that I think you should follow the letter of the law.
Correct.
I don't think you
The
necessarily.
reason that piece was included there was that gives you some insight into what the residents were asking for.
Mhm.
That is not what was agreed to, but it was their negotiating position at a point in the negotiations,
Sure.
that's what they were asking for. They wanted it to be a park, they wanted to have trails with benches.
Mhm.
They didn't get an agreement that it would be a
Nope.
park, and they didn't get an agreement that there'd be trails with benches. What they did get was that there would be this picnic pavilion. Now, my question to you is, do you really want to have a picnic pavilion that's not under the control of the park board? And I guess that's
But-
part of this here tonight.
At the park board meeting, it was brought to us by the water department, or water utility, to accept this in as a park, and that's what the park board recommended to this council, is to bring it into our park system, period. Which, if you look at this, makes common sense.
And who's gonna pay for it? I guess the thing that I don't like is I don't like the fact that it's helter-skelter. There doesn't seem to be a plan. Do we say we're gonna take it out of Prospect Park now? Which park are we gonna cut on? I mean, for the maintenance and the time. Do we just say, well, it doesn't matter, we can grow any park we want? Or is there a limit to the number of parks we
Most
have?
of our parks are not getting cut every week anyways.
Well, that's not true, Randy.
Yes, it is.
Our parks are getting cut every week, aren't they?
Webster Park, is that every week?
What? Yeah, every week. Yes, they are.
Well,
I live right there, Al. It's not cut every week.
well, with the exception of weeks when it's been
Raining.
raining, there was at least 1 week when I couldn't mow my lawn despite the fact I wanted to.
I agree, but they're not all getting cut every week.
Are impact fees not allowed to be used to help start up this area?
It would depend.
Probably was charged impact fees
They
at the
were.
time of development.
I'm sure it was charged impact fees to charge them, so they've already,
But
No.
actually, this was a private piece of
But-
land.
okay, so, but now that it's considered city land and it would be possibly a city park, wouldn't impact fees then play?
You'd have to
Impact
run
fees
role?
usually aren't allowed for
analysis.
operational. They're for development, I believe, more the
The
construction
facilities.
facilities.
All right.
And there is development required here.
Right, but as
But
far as the
the-
long-term maintenance.
But that's
that
the,
can't-
The
part-
utility
that's
is
the water
paying.
utility.
Water
Yeah.
utility, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got a motion, and we've had a lot of discussion. Scott, you're next.
I would like to say that this does bring to light a dilemma that we have been talking about for some time, which is that, and I'm not casting any aspersions or pointing any fingers, but the park board has once again written a check that they can't cash because they don't have a budget. So they have voted to take on a responsibility on behalf of another department, which also doesn't have the money to do this. Park board doesn't have the money to do this. We don't have the money in Public Works to do this. And that's the only reason to vote no on this. Am I voting against kids or voting against parks or voting against picnic areas? Certainly not. It's just that we would have to truck all the way over there every week. And it's not just mowing the lawn. When JJ goes out in the morning and with the other guys and clears out the garbage cans from Lakefront Park and our other parks, they're now gonna have to go across 35 to get the garbage cans over there. And so it's not just mowing the lawn. Also, Mary, it's not just $12 an hour to mow the lawn. It's the cost of the gas and the oil, the depreciation on the equipment, the insurance on the person who's pushing the lawnmower. It's a lot more than that, because in Public Works, we deal with this all the time. we don't have the funds to do this thing that you want.
Okay, I understand what you're saying there, but you talk about it all the way over there, all the way over there. If we didn't want to go all the way across 35, then we shouldn't have annexed and we shouldn't have created development all the way across 35. And if we're going to have a development all the way across 35, we need to find a way to help and support that development. That area is going to continue to grow. Are we no longer going to annex south at all? Because if we're not, then maybe, you know, shuffle everything under the rug. But right now, we have a development across 35 that belongs to the city of Hudson, and they don't have a park or an area to go without having to get in the car and go.
But I think there's plenty of places in the city that you have to get in a car to go to a park.
That's fine, but we're talking about it like we're going all the way over there. They're part of the city.
Yeah.
Right.
We need to support them.
I do want to point out also, if you reread number 5, it says here that we agreed as the city council, right? City shall, sorry, wrong one here. Shall be maintained by the city of Hudson, okay?
Yep.
With picnic pavilion, you know, it should be maintained. So we're not talking about if we should, we've already said we will.
Yep.
It's just what is it that we're maintaining? That's what we're talking about.
Call for the
So
question.
you're gonna
Okay, question's been called.
repeat the
You read back the motion. I think the motion was for my recommendation on the issue sheet, which included 3 points. That the southerly 10 acres of Outlot 1 should be used and developed as a city park with not more than 2 acres to be mowed, leaving the rest in a natural state. That upon completion, the city should accept responsibility for maintenance of the pavilion, the driveway, and the parking spaces on the 10 acres. And that we would ask the park board for recommendations on naming the park. Question's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Motion passed 3-2. Let's move on to number 7, which is consider other options and costs for lawn mowing city right-of-way and trails. A couple years ago, we split the mowing into several parcels and we went out to bids. One of the parts was to do ditches and road right-of-ways and our trails. The other was buildings. And then we've got parks. So we've had 2 different private contractors. This is our second year of this. In the first year, at the end of the 1-year contract for 2009, both our contractors asked if they could continue and extend, including this contractor, Becker, who asked in a letter he wrote that he'd like to continue for 2010. Now we're a few months into 2010, and honestly, it's been a tough year for lawn mowing. There's been a lot of grass. And now he has written a letter that he'd like to break the contract and terminate in the middle of the year. We may or may not have some action to take in that. That's a separate issue. The issue is, in the meantime, we've started to have city staff mow using our equipment that has been in storage, using our seasonal part-time employees that had been doing other maintenance jobs. As a stopgap interim solution that will work for as long as you want to make it work. The Finance Committee discussed this, a couple different ways we can go. One of the things we talked about, and I think ultimately our recommendation, was that we may want to break down this right-of-way into some different bid packages. For example, some of the road right-of-way that's closest to parks that are already being mowed by our park contractor, we may be able to get a pretty favorable price on that because they wouldn't have to haul the equipment and so on. They're already there. And there's some road right-of-way that's in the St. Croix Business Park. That's been a pass-through cost to the business park. We may want to separate that out and see if we can get a separate bid on that part of it. And there may be parts that we end up mowing ourselves. So the recommendation was that in the interim, the Public Works would do it, provided that the expenditure doesn't go over what is currently budgeted, which is $9,300 left. And that we would continue to work on breaking this up and other options and to try to get bids and pricing that might be more competitive than what we can do in-house.
I'd like to move for option 2, utilize part-time seasonal staff, city equipment for the remainder of 2010 mowing season, with the aspect of taking in other bids.
Second.
Okay, there's motion and second for option 2. In the way of discussion, I'll point out to you that the year before we went out to bids, that lawn mowing contract went considerably over what was budgeted, and that was at a time that we were budgeting much more than this. The odds that we can get through the year doing this are not very high if it continues. So you're going to need to be prepared, as in our previous discussion, to cut somewhere else in the Public Works budget if that's what you want to do, or else continue to look for other lower cost options. The idea that the cost of lawn mowing is just the labor, i.e. 2 acres can be done in an hour and it's $12, that's not realistic.
According to the sheet, though, that what Tom put together is he thought that the $9,300 would cover the hours and the gas and the, you know, those things to operate if we did it with internal staff, correct?
That's what he put on
At
the
40
sheet.
hours a week, yep.
When, if you'll recall, when we looked at this issue before and we considered things like what is the cost of an hour of Dan Ortner's time as the mechanic to be fixing our equipment and so on, I honestly don't see it. I mean, if you think that $1,300 will handle fuel, equipment, and maintenance for all that lawn mowing equipment from here to the end of the summer, I mean, how much have you had to put into your lawnmower this year? I mean, $1,300 is not going to go very far when you start doing all this. It just, to me, it's not a realistic number.
Well, pardon me, I was looking at, I recognize that Tom must have done some research here in coming up with his numbers, so I was using his number here on the sheet. I believe your point is well taken, though, even if we look at splitting and looking at some external contracts as well as some internal, and whether we cut back on hours because we can't afford as much maintenance, questioning the parks again. But according to this calculation that we're provided to make the decision on, it looks like you can cover it with internal staff.
Yeah. The year before we did this, on our long-term capital requests, we had lawnmower equipment requests. You'll have it again next year. And when that happens, you'll look back and say, well, what's going on here? Because that lawnmower equipment wears out.
Yep.
And it hasn't been wearing out because it's been sitting in the shed. But, so that's the part. And I guess the question is there a financial analysis here? I mean, I'm not questioning that Tom did some work on it. I'm just saying I don't think $1,300 is the whole thing.
I think, Mr. Mayor, we've got a better handle on what it actually costs us better than we did 2 years ago. And we know, and again, we'll go out and take a good hard look at it again this year and our service that we get for what we pay, and decide whether it makes more sense to do it inside or try and
So would
contract it
you
out.
be willing to say right now that we'll extrapolate out that we can do the right-of-way trails, buildings, and parking lots, and we can do it for this again next year? So that's what
No.
we should put in the budget for next year?
No.
What's not realistic about it for next year that's realistic this year? I'm saying on a proportional. So this is part of the year, but we would extrapolate out from this on a monthly.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we already know we're going to be at least $1,300 over budget, even on these numbers. So we can't use these numbers for next year. So I think let's not worry about next year. Let's deal with the remainder of this summer right now.
Well, I think the issue that you don't have, Dean, is you don't have the bids from the outside people at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
845 hours times $11 an hour is your $9,300 right there. And it's going to cost us an additional $1,300 in equipment costs.
Lower that they're
No,
gonna try to do it for
720 hours,
Yeah.
plus the 1,300 gives us the 9,300. That's how I calculated it. You might be right, though, if we use the
Yeah.
845 number.
Well,
But basically what I'm saying is,
Yep.
look, next year when we're gonna go out to bids and we're gonna compare between our in-house and our external bidders, we're all agreeing right now that the number we're gonna use next year is that in-house, it takes 40 hours a week to mow the right-of-way trails, buildings, and parking lots. And from this point forward, we've agreed that, you know, the fuel, equipment, maintenance, and depreciation is around $300 a month for that lawnmower equipment. I just think it's.
No, I don't think we're
it's not-
agreeing to that.
Agreeing on that.
Because just so you're aware that that's all yet to be determined, I think.
Absolutely.
This is just the remainder of the season is what they're looking at here, right?
Tom?
That 40 hours is an estimate, of course, and based on the moisture we've had this year with the amount of rain that we had, it's gonna be hard to cut these in 40 hours. This is based on, if you look at the season, and you're gonna have some, you know, in July and August, September, sometimes you don't mow as often. So, I mean, this is kind of the whole picture. I mean, you're not gonna, I know we're not gonna get this done in 40 hours, but if you average the whole season out, that's what I believe is a fair average.
Thank you.
Can we get a map at, the next time we get the bids, can we get a map for the city of all the right-of-ways that need to be cut?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
We have a pretty complete bid document that we put together back at the time. Okay, we got a motion. Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Number 8, consider renewal of alcoholic beverage licenses for 2010 to 2011. There are 2. They've completed their building inspections and they have no outstanding debt. Staff recommendation is for approval, and Finance Committee recommended approval. Therefore, La Dolce Vita,
Move for
doing
approval.
business as Urban Olive and Vine, and for Grubbs Pizzeria and Eatery.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion is second to approve. Any discussion? In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion pass, and we'll grant those licenses. We removed the number 10 from consent. That's consider participation in the pharmaceutical take-back program. This is something we talked about in regard to our protection of our groundwater supply and diversion of excess or surplus or unused pharmaceuticals. And Chief Jensen has studied it. We've talked about going in a collaborative program with other surrounding law enforcement agencies, including St. Croix County. You can see the memo from Veolia for what the costs or the rates would be. The unknown factor here is what the quantity collected will be. We don't have a definite budget number. That's yet to be determined. What the chief is asking for here is approval of the program and go ahead and get started with it, and we'll have to come back to you at budget time. We'll have sort of a part of a year hopefully in by then, and by next year we'll be able to decide what it's going to cost. I think the part of this year, it's pretty difficult to say what it will cost. Dolly, how much will it cost?
Well, going on, let me go there.
Yep.
In my contact with lots of other communities and counties, municipalities that have been doing it, it's not an extremely costly item, primarily because meds don't weigh a lot.
Yep.
And if you can get volunteers, you know, you people, anyway, all of us, the police you can trust, and they take and they reduce, you know, you take the Vicks cough drops out of the box and you throw the box in recycle, you unbubble the bubble wrap things, so you're actually dealing with meds. It takes a whole lot of meds to make a pound. And then you have to decide, and I don't know, I think you have the document from Veolia in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a decision then as to whether you want to separate the controlled from the uncontrolled. The uncontrolled are the Tums, the aspirins, that kind of thing. That's a cheaper rate. However, one of the big considerations that many communities that I've talked to, municipalities, they're saying, it's not fair if anything is going to be put into trash and to go into groundwater. And so they say treat it all as controlled. However, in my conversations with Veolia, they say that they do have a program and they are incinerating the uncontrolled, but then that means you have to do the separation. Now, if you can get volunteers, and most of the communities I've been talking to, they have no problem getting the volunteers. Local pharmacists, anybody. I mean, as long as the police can trust who it is that you're working with, that somebody's not sticking it in their pocket and going off with it. And they said a couple, 3 hours of a night, you can go through a lot of those blue totes that they just kind of throw stuff in when people put it to the container. Cost-wise, in talking to Dunn County, they did the whole county for $2,000
For a year?
for the year. But, Dunn County doesn't have quite the people. We have Menomineen's got a lot of people, really.
Well, that might be all we need for now, Dolly. And this is Dolly Qualls, a resident of the town of Hudson, who's been interested in this program. I had asked her to research it, and she's attended some statewide meetings. Is that fair to say?
Well,
A statewide meeting?
as much as I can, right?
Yeah.
I think to get started, it's not going to be terribly expensive. It really is not.
Well, my thinking is we won't know what we'll collect until we start collecting. If we can't afford to do it, we may have to find another option.
Can I say one more thing? I did some homework, and one of our big concerns has been if we're going to have everybody coming in from across the river. And I did make a contact, and the 7 county metropolitan law enforcement sheriffs, whatever they're called, they are getting a program going, because on April 10th, Minnesota passed the Safe Drug Disposal Act, which now is making it very easy for Minnesota to get their work done. Yeah. And so that shouldn't be much of a problem.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the reason I asked to have it off the consent agenda was just to make the public aware that this is a program that we're looking at, and it sounds like we'll see if we approve it tonight, but it becomes available, and we'll be having more discussion on it, implementation.
We'll be the first in St. Croix County, apparently, although the county is open to collaborating. There's been discussion about a larger group of law enforcement agencies or governments. It's here for discussion. It
So-
hasn't had committee work.
Are we gonna accept from the township and village of North Hudson and everybody else also?
Well, that's the question.
Are they
Because
gonna-
we'll be paying for the
Is
incineration.
the town willing to spend money to help fund this?
We already have talked to Chairman Johnson, and we said, well, would you think that the township would be willing to kick in? We think if we can come up with like $300, we have a lot of little municipalities. He said, well, I would surely think so. I mean, that's not going to be a big item. And I do know that Chief Deputy Schultz is working hard on this, and they've had a meeting with all of the chiefs from all the other communities. And if every little, I'm thinking township would talk, and they're thinking about possibly having drop stations in other communities, but then we'll pool all of our resources, or not say, pull all the resources from everybody, and then send one big package like with Veolia. And I don't know if you read that in your paper, but they have only a one-time-a-year collection, which is in Jefferson County, near Madison. And then the costs are divided out by the other municipalities. There's an $1,800 witness burn fee, which the incinerator place charges. But if you've got 30 communities, like if St. Croix County goes down now as one entity, we're just one community. And so as a result then, they divide. I talked to Billy, they said last time, I think they had like 30 municipalities that came, divide 30 into $1,800, it doesn't cost a lot.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the
Yes.
mechanics of this, how this would
Yes.
operate? Because Veolia's message to us is that we can put it in any kind of container we want. However, when we deliver it, as they say, what Mark says, when it's delivered to Veolia, they're gonna put it in their own special containers.
Right.
Well, how do we collect it, and how are we delivering it, and who's gonna do all that?
The police department, our plan is that there will be a constructed metal container, which we can get the plans, it's been done elsewhere, that I think our guys could weld up. that it acts kind of like, let's say, a book drop would act, where or a letter drop, where you put it in, but you can't reach in there and get it out
And this
again.
would be down at the police station, or?
Presumably, and as Dolly said, I mean, there may be others around the county, and that might be one way that we share with other municipalities, that they collect theirs and we go together on the disposal fee. That part's yet to be worked out, but yes, at the Hudson Police Department is where we plan to do
So
this.
there's one focal point?
One focal point,
Okay.
yeah.
I would like to make the motion, and I think this will answer part of your question. I'd like the motion that we pursue the pharmaceutical take-back program, and that we get provided with the details of how the program will work and the kickoff date as to when people can start bringing it down. Because obviously we're participating in the starting the program, but it's not started yet until we have the rest of it built. So I think that's what we're being asked to approve tonight, correct?
We can start it before the budget time. You could wait and explore this further and run it up the flagpole for budget time if you want to. I mean, it's one of those things that needs some discussion. We'll need to create some sort of a storage facility.
Yep, so my motion is that we pursue the pharmaceutical take-back program and build out the specifics of how we're going to manage it.
And bring it back.
Mhm.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I'd like to ask a question. And I'm a big fan of this program. I also, with a neighbor of mine, brought it like a year and a half ago to Sergeant Atkinson to get something like this brought into Hudson or even the county. I thought that there is a possibility for a grant that we could receive. I asked the chief about that a couple weeks ago, and I never heard back. Is there a grant out there that we can apply for?
There are grants through the Department of Agriculture, and I think they said now, Tammy Whitmer, who's the Land and Water Conservation, she's been coordinating with Deputy Schultz, and we found out now, I think it's starting now at the end, sometime in August, is their new fiscal year. And when I talked to Eau Claire County, they said they got $3,500 last year from the ATCP, that cap. And so there are.
That could be part
I
of
think
what
we
we
need to
come back, is we'll explore whether there's grants available.
We need to pursue a grant if we're gonna do this, because again, we have budget issues. That's
Right.
just one way to help the budget.
And that's why I wanted to come back with a date too, so that we know what we're gonna do and when we're gonna do it by, and how much it's gonna cost. This is a great program, just,
Right, but
Okay,
I would like to
what's
make sure
next?
that we explore a grant instead of just looking into where we can find the room in our budget.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed. And we'll move right along. Number 11, approve the 2010 capital outlay budget. Authorize the city administrator to proceed with short-term financing. We discussed the financing last meeting, and we had Sean from Ellers was here, and we talked about and we voted on going forward with short-term financing, but the actual authorization to do that wasn't on the agenda, and so that part needed to come back. At the same time, we have not formally approved our final 2010 capital project budget. We've approved pieces of it. So tonight, the Finance Committee made the motion that we would go forward with the short-term financing and authorize the city administrator to proceed with that, and that we would approve the 2010 capital outlay budget as shown in your packet on the spreadsheet on the back.
It basically would be the project approved column and the final recommendation column, and that would give you your final approved over on the right.
Is everyone clear on that? Project approved are items that have come forward to the council in the interim from last fall till now, like the dump truck we already bought. Just follow the dump truck if you go down as an example. In the left column, it says public works equipment, dump truck and plow. The original budget allocation was $230,000. We bought the truck for $190,000, so that's already been approved. And so it's in the final approved capital outlay budget now for $190,000. The two things that are being adjusted here tonight are the very last bottom line, general parks, the beach house trail improvements. They originally asked for $10,000. As the year went on, they changed it to $35,000. And that's where it was at our last meeting. I've recommended that that be eliminated from this year's budget and pushed off to 2011. So that's no longer in here. And then for the police furniture, we originally allocated $43,500. We didn't know what all it was gonna take over in the new building. Several items over there have come in under budget. They were very successful at getting donated furniture. And so at this point, we've only approved about $5,500. So I'm suggesting tonight that we make a slight adjustment downward in, so that the remaining budget for the year is $31,000 instead of $38,000. So with those two, that will bring us down to $750,000, and we can do the short-term borrowing for that.
Can I ask about the 10 grand on that Walnut Street Bridge?
Yes.
Do we need it?
Well, that's a good question. Chuck's here, and Chuck, maybe you want to come up and defend that a little bit
If it's
for us.
for him, we don't need it then, right? Because it's for Bonostro's preliminary work?
Yeah, let's talk about why it might be needed. I've had my doubts about it, but here's the question there is, let me frame this up for you, Randy. That used to be a bridge that
Ask
had
it right.
traffic on it. It wasn't so long ago we got highway funds. We actually got Ice-T funds for that, not too terribly long ago. But it's no longer open to general traffic, so it's become our own little bridge to park property.
Bridge to nowhere.
No, it's not nowhere. It's beautiful park property, but it's an internal city bridge that is our job to maintain. Now, the last study that was done on it came up with recommended over $400,000 in improvements. But the basis of that study was to maintain it at its original load limits as what was once a county or even state highway. I'm not sure, but I mean, it was. Now the question is, for once in a while emergency vehicle traffic and mostly pedestrian traffic, what do we need to do with that bridge to keep it up to safety standards? So with that, what do you recommend?
Well, I wrote a couple memos on this back last fall, I believe, when we were originally discussing this. And so I'm going off my memory a little bit here, so correct me if something doesn't sound quite right to you. But the bottom line is, once it was determined not to be a public bridge, the county stopped doing their 2-year inspection of that bridge. And so I believe the last time that bridge was inspected was maybe 05 or 06.
05.
I don't recall the year. So it's been several years. Now, I know at one time there was some discussion about, well, what about garbage trucks? And, are we using smaller vehicles now to travel that bridge to do the pickup of the weekly garbage? I'm not sure where that's at. But that's where the conversation, which originally started, was that it's not being reviewed every other year by the county. The county isn't interested in reviewing it. And within that $10,000, there's actually 2 reviews. There's a kind of the above water typical review, and then there's also a more expensive where you'd hire divers to go down there and look at the scouring and the condition of the bridge below the water. And why that's important now is I think that's useful information to help you kind of formulate and come up with some sort of long-term plan. 10 years from now, when you replace it, are you going to be able to use those footings? Or, obviously you can probably get by with a much narrower bridge. Goes into play though, do you want to maintain emergency vehicles going across that? Then it's going to have to be built to some sort of standard. Are you going to reduce, like the garbage trucks and lower that? So that's why I believe that 10,000. And what I presented in my second memo regarding this, I don't quite remember the details, was kind of a more staged approach, where you'd have my bridge engineer, structural engineer, come out and look at it for a couple $1,000, and see if there's anything, see if he notices anything, and then based upon that, make some recommendations on whether or not, you know, a underwater type of inspection is warranted at this time.
Okay, so, we don't have a motion yet at this point, do we?
No.
May I ask a further question about that item that Randy brought up?
Yes.
It's an interesting point. We talk about the traffic on that bridge, and Tom Zulli, I'm going to ask you about this too, because yes, it's most every day, it's just pedestrian traffic. Once a year, we have the fire truck and everything else go out there for the fireworks, which we just had last weekend. Good display too. But don't we every week also have the sanitation truck where the porta potties go out there? And I have been told that that is not going to ever be a pickup truck like our Parks and Public Works uses for emptying the garbage cans, but that the pumper that goes out and takes care of our sanitation devices is always going to be a big, heavy truck. Maybe I'm misinformed. Tom, is my understanding correct?
That's correct.
So we're always going to have either no porta potties out there or always a large, heavy vehicle going over that bridge. So we can talk about pedestrian traffic all we want, but we're going to have heavy vehicles going over that bridge.
And at some point, I suppose we'll have made the decision how much money we put into it versus 5 years ago, a discussion about what are the trade-offs in having a septic system out there.
Yeah, and you could run a truck out there for many, many years.
Not for $450,000.
Well, that's not on the agenda for tonight.
But I had a question about that number, the 450,000. I was paralleling, but the $450,000 inspection would bring it up to a. That's not only weight, but it's also number of vehicles per day, per hour, whatever. And when we're looking at 1 or 2 vehicles per week, is there a rating that we can come up with that says, you know, that bridge will hold out just fine for the next 50 years with 3 vehicles a week? Is there some rating in there where we can look at we don't need it to handle 1,000 vehicles a day?
Well, and when there was 80-20 money, 80% coming from the DOT on this project, obviously there was some width standards and everything else that came into play, where if it's just strictly limited to emergency police and, you know, sanitation trucks, then you'd have, you know, you could get by with a 12-foot type of bridge and something substantially less costly. And again, you know, another thing I should add about it hasn't been looked at since '05. Looking at it, there might be some run-of-the-mill maintenance items that are noticed that can, you know, extend the life of that bridge even further.
Well, you're saying that this is 10 grand for your engineering fee.
No.
What is it for?
Well, I don't have those memos in front of me, but
Well,
it was
inspections.
$1,500, $2,000
Okay.
for us to go look at it, and then the remainder, the $7,000 or whatever was for the underwater stuff.
Okay, so my point is that when we decide our budget can't handle this anymore, and we're not gonna redo this bridge next year or the following year, we're gonna spend 10 grand for you to keep coming back to us for your fees, your inspection fees, every year, so we can continue to possibly fix this bridge. I think this, at this point, is an unnecessary cost, but because
We haven't inspected it for.
but because realistically, we're not gonna do anything with this bridge in the near future.
Well, we've been doing something almost every year. We've done something with it because it's more a pedestrian bridge than anything else. But 2 years ago, we improved the railings on it, and there was some
Potholes we fixed.
along the one side. We had some special fabricated metal in order to.
Needed engineers to.
No,
No,
we
no.
didn't use engineering. But the point is, Randy, the bridge. We need the bridge. There's going to need to be some way to get out there to access what is a beautiful park amenity. To be able to go for that walk down that road is something we want to maintain. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be a $400,000 job. Part of the reason I recommended approval of this was public safety. The second is, let's get in there and see what the footings look like. That way we can talk about because if the footings are bad, we're in a whole different discussion.
And Randy, I'll take the blame for that, because that was my initiative to spend 75, it was 75, Chuck, to go underwater, because my point was, I don't care what it looks like above the water, if it's rusting away and rotting away under the water, and it's gonna fall down, we've got to know that before somebody falls with it.
Well, and I totally agree. I mean, we had the fire truck sitting out there before the bridge if we happened to have to drive it out there for the fireworks. But what if we don't know the fact that the next time we pull that fire truck over there, it's not gonna make it out to the end? We don't know that without an inspection.
So is it 2,000 to inspect it above and below water, or is it 7,500 to go below water and 2,000 to inspect above water?
Second one.
Yeah. And I should state too that we asked, on several occasions, we've asked the county to keep doing these inspections, and they're unwilling to do so.
They're unwilling to do so? I'm sorry, is that? what
Yeah,
you're-
the county's not interested in doing the safety inspection.
So are we gonna continue each year? How long is these inspections good for?
Well,
Each year to spend 10 grand?
it
We
was,
aren't under any obligation from any other agency anywhere as far as how often we have to inspect it. It's as if we had a bridge in a park that was our own bridge. I mean, that's what you've got there now. They're not helping to pay for it, and they're also not giving you their unfunded mandate of you will do it every so many years. So now you're on your own. How often do you think we should inspect it?
When are we gonna work on it?
Well, when the inspection says we have to, but so far, the last time we did it, we gave them the parameters of inspect it as a highway bridge. It's not a highway bridge anymore.
Exactly.
Well, Randy asked a good question, Oda. How long is this inspection usually good for? I mean, is it, it's
well,
not salt water, so we don't have to worry about that deteriorating the bridge, so.
and when you're doing a safety inspection, what it is you're looking for the deterioration that has happened from the last safety inspection, okay? So that's what we would be doing from '05 till now. Again, when it was on a every other year basis of review, that's not happening anymore. And I would think, that's a good starting point as far as when to perform these safety inspections. But because of the travel, I guess that's something the public works to discuss is, extending it out. But it has been 6 years now without any sort of review.
So if
6
this was-
years or so.
So if this is a busy highway bridge, it would have to be inspected every 2 years.
Well, some highway bridges are every year, but when it was on the system, it was every other year.
So you take 10 grand divided by 6 years, and that's what we're spending per year.
Yeah.
But if we see a significant amount of deterioration, I would say in the last 6 years, we have to inspect it more often. I think that would be the answer if we come back and say, you got 40% deterioration in your pilings over the last 6 years, we need to inspect it more often.
Except they didn't do an underwater inspection. It was only above water. I don't know when the last time, if ever, there was an underwater inspection done. So we don't have any idea what's below water.
I would like to move we accept the 2010 capital projects budget of $750,000 and authorize our city administrator to obtain interim financing to fund that budget.
Second.
Thank you. And I assume, Kathy, you'll be coming back with a resolution on that, or do we not need to?
Once we get the information
To
from the bank.
approve the
we'll do a resolution,
financing.
yes.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
That 10 grand could cut a lot of grass, Al.
Well,
Further questions?
I don't think the maker of the motion or the seconder want to remove it.
Excuse me, I'm following
I think
the grass comment here.
Yeah. Well, it
think
costs more to
he's-
replace the
no?
fire truck.
All right. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed. Consider accepting or rejecting bids for White Camp Park Pavilion project. The bids came in. Staff and the committee have made their recommendations. We seem to have one item of dispute, and so we decided to pull this off the, oh, did I remember to pull it off? Was it ever on consent?
It wasn't on
No, it
It
consent.
wasn't on consent.
We just thought it was.
We thought it was. All right. All right, the low bidder, Braden Construction, the recommendation from staff and the committee is to accept their base bid in the amount of $252,450 for the construction of a pavilion at White Camp Park. There were some alternates with the bid. The staff recommended items 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 for an additional cost of $35,852. The Public Works Committee recommended only alternates 1, 2, 6, and 7 for a additional cost above base of $31,607. After some discussion, the Finance Committee recommended 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 for $35,852. The difference is whether there is cement board or natural wood for some of the, is it fascia or is it siding? I'm not certain. But it's trim work. And the architect preferred, from the standpoint of architectural consistency with the neighborhood and aesthetic concerns, that it be natural wood.
And I will make a motion that we accept the bid of $252,450 as the base bid, with the additional alternates added to it, adding $35,852, putting back in alternate number 5. I had asked that be taken out because at the time we had no indication from anyone as to where the cedar was going to be. And our fear was that if it was within arm's reach, it might suffer the same fate as we had happened down at the beach house. But apparently it's going to be up in the ceiling or around the ceiling trim.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes. Should be pointed out, this is coming out of park impact fees that we already have and we've collected from homes that were built in the city and in that neighborhood. We did number 13 on consent, and we did the clock on consent. That takes us to the back page. Update on projects. What do we have going on, Chuck?
Hello. Well, we have submitted the STIP application for Wisconsin Street for the 80% funding of that project to the county. They'll then forward it to the DOT, and we should hear something in October. There was also, you can see in my memorandum that there was a bicycle pedestrian facilities program that I did take a quick look at, but the minimum project size was $200,000, and the bicycle ped improvements of that Wisconsin Street project only amounts to about $100,000. So you'd have to essentially double the scope of that if you were to pursue those funds. That application is due August 2nd. So if staff or council came up with a project by your next meeting, you know, we could get an application in on that. The 2009 street improvement project, we're going to bring out this Friday a pavement specialist from the DOT, Minnesota DOT. My construction.
Does he realize there's a river here?
Yeah, we don't tell him that. No, but we have people on the same task force, and he's really interested in really reviewing these types of things, and so he will be coming over, and you know, we have our thoughts, and we just want him to confirm or enhance what we're observing there, as far as not only why the rock is all rattling, but also the best methods to repair it, bring it back to.
You're talking about
Where's-
Beedeman.
Going to Beedeman Farms for that?
Yes, and actually it's the seal coat. It's the Beedeman Farms, the industrial park, and all the roads that were seal coated in 2009. 11th Street is not on here, but Excel will be sending a letter out to several residents. They're going to have to repair sod for the 3rd time. So we've been working with them on that. And as far as the private developments, there's a few that are under the review process, some smaller commercial type of developments, and you know, we should see that final wear paving on that Heritage Cottage development in the next month or so.
Chuck, at the last meeting, I had asked you for an update or for Crestview and why it was cracking. We were already seal coating it up there, or sealing cracks.
Oh, yeah, that's all part of that 2009 project and the pavement.
So you don't have anything yet? No.
Well, that's what's gonna be with the MinDOT and the county.
Right.
Yeah.
The Crestview, we just did mill and overlay on year before last.
Yeah.
I think the concern that
It's
Randy had was, why are there cracks already when it had mill and overlay? That one didn't have seal coat.
Oh, no, but
But
as
you
part
were
of the
already-
2009 project was the year after Crestview was done, and so we did seal some of those cracks up.
Okay.
So that's what I was referring to. Pavement will always, it naturally cracks, and so, you know, after a year, we anticipate, you know, Cooley Road will be cracking next year, and then, you know, you'll have to seal those cracks up.
Really?
Yes.
If the story is if it cracked before, it'll be cracking again? That's
Yeah,
kind of the.
Yeah, it'll come through. In some communities that I work for, you know, they'll saw cut new roads, and purposely, that's what we do up in, like St. Joseph, we'll, every 40 feet, we'll saw cut a crack and seal it right after it's constructed. And so there's two schools of thought of that, and Tom and I have been, you know, in discussions about whether or not that's something we should be doing in Hudson.
Any other questions for Chuck? All right, thanks, Chuck. Let's move on to new business, disallowance of claim of Kathleen Lowell Nord National Subrogation Services, Resolution 1110.
Who's suspending the rules?
Got a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Morissette?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Burchell?
Yes.
Yaku?
Yes.
All right, so the motion passed. The rules are suspended towards adoption of Resolution 11-10.
Move to adopt resolution 11-10.
Second. Motion and a second to adopt. Any discussion?
And this is basically, we're just saying that it wasn't due to any fault of the city that our sewers backed up.
No negligence was found during the investigation. No negligence was found on the part of the city. The city would be liable if they knew and didn't take any action. In
The
this
insurance
case, we had
company
no
knows.
knowledge of any problem there. We had no, the problem was only discovered afterwards when they found that there were, I believe the investigation found, it's on the letter, that there were roots, rags and roots blocking the sewer line, and we knew.
Right. I'm wondering, our normal inspections, are we missing something during our? I just have a little bit of an issue with it, because it's, you know, it's easy to say, well, we didn't know about it, so it's not our fault. But what inspections do we do to make sure that some of our sewers are clean and stay flowing?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to check with Shriver on that, what the schedule is.
Because we could have this happen, now let's say one of our mains backed up and we flooded a whole subdivision. Can
Yeah.
we just say, oh,
What
sorry,
happens in
we didn't know
insurance
about it."
subrogation is, you know, let's say you have insurance for something. Well, your insurance company's gonna cover you. But also to reduce their costs, they're gonna do their best to find someone else that they can pin the cost on. So, I mean,
Right.
this is a case where that insurance company's gonna cover this. But they're trying to collect from our insurance company for something, and our insurance company is saying, hey, you know what, no.
Yeah, because we do our due diligence in making sure our sewer systems are clear. That's what I was getting
Right.
at.
Okay, so there's, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. We'll get to closed session in a little bit. Communications and recommendations of the mayor. We had a fantastic 4th of July and Booster Days, including lots of people in downtown Hudson. One of our restaurants told me they had their biggest day ever. which is something, so that's good in a period of a down economy. To see lots of things happening. We had a nice fireworks display, which is an item that the city contributes $10,000 towards that fireworks display. In the last couple of years, we've been putting that out to bid and aggressively working to get the best display we can get. The library opened today in the new facility at 11 o'clock. There was a crowd outside waiting to get in. The first 2 hours, there were people streaming through and lines of people waiting to check out books and a lot of excitement. Construction is not completely done yet, but they'll be open again tomorrow, and anyone who's interested might want to stop down and see the new library facility. Any communications from any alderperson? City attorney?
Nope.
City administrator? At this time, we've got on our agenda that we may want to go into closed session pursuant to Section 1985 1G of Wisconsin statutes to confer with legal counsel regarding strategy to be adopted with respect to the pending litigation of Lifeline Systems doing business as LifeQuest versus the City of Hudson, and to confer with legal counsel regarding strategy relating to the litigation in which the city is involved regarding the council decision on the Sharon Horn Elstrom LLC liquor license renewal. What's your pleasure?
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Morset,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Wyland,
Yes.
Burchell,
Yes.
Yaku.
Yes.
All right, motion passed, and we will convene into closed session. Thanks for coming.